And here we are at last, one of the most hyped films of 2024, one anticipated by nerds and average moviegoers alike, Deadpool and Wolverine. So, for all you non-nerds, this is a cinematic combo that people have wanted to see for decades. And if you're thinking, why? Why these two guys? What's so special about that? Well, back in the early 90s, there was a Marvel Comics series called Weapon X. The series focused on a secret program called Weapon X, where several elite people were experimented on and given abilities so that they could be used as super soldiers. Among these elite few were Logan, aka Wolverine, and Wade Wilson, aka Deadpool, among a few others. And now you might be thinking, wait a minute, didn't we already see this back in 2009 with X-Men Origins Wolverine? Well, yes and no. I mean, yeah, that movie, highlighted the Weapon X program, which was cool, but it's a shit movie. And yeah, Deadpool was in it, but it was a shit Deadpool. We did get to see, for the first time, Ryan Reynolds as Wade Wilson, and that was really cool. But Deadpool was completely botched, and it left a sour taste in comic fans' mouths for years. Even Ryan Reynolds himself has voiced his disapproval with the film's portrayal of his character. So here we are at last with the movie that we've been wanting. Hell, the one we've been needing. This, of course, created some very high expectations. So did it deliver? I think that's the real question here. Now I'll kind of start by saying I went to see this yesterday, which was opening day. I saw the very first showtime, 3 p.m. It was a really cool experience, a really cool theater experience, which I have not had in years, decades maybe. I'm not really sure. It was just so cool. It was playing in one of the big theaters, one of the big screen rooms, whatever those are called. And I have talked about some of my movie-going experiences lately where I have seen movies with 10 or 15 people. I've even seen a few just by myself. Like I've seen Oddity twice now. Both times it was just me in the room. So this was the most people I've seen in a long time. Probably 40 people. I'm going to say 40 in a room that fits several hundred. So, you can kind of do what you will with that. But it was just such a great experience, man. There being 40 to 50 people, roughly, no talking during the movie. Now, I've also talked about some of my experiences lately with a shitload of just disruptive behavior, talking, banging shit around, and in a room with like fucking 5 or 6 people. This was, again, 50, 60, 40, something like that. And nobody talked at all. Laughing, yes. And it was great. It was like being at Comic-Con, too. It was just all nerds. Awesome. Great experience. Yeah, 2 thumbs up. Anyways, so this time around we have Sean Levy in the director's chair. The dude's got almost 30 years of directing experience, and he's worked with, both Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman in the past. Now, this film has its ups and downs, in my personal opinion, so I'll start with the positives. I mean, I could sum this up pretty quick if I wanted to. This fucking movie is almost entirely fan service. And honestly, that could be seen as both good and bad. The entire runtime here is just packed full with things that fans have been asking for over the years. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to include any spoilers, but it's like every 2 minutes we are introduced to another Marvel character that we may or may have not wanted to see in a Deadpool movie. I mean, famously, the previous 2 Deadpool movies only had a small handful of Marvel characters. So you get to see a lot of Marvel characters that you haven't seen in a long time, and the coolest part, in my opinion, was that they were played by the actors that portrayed them originally instead of, someone else, someone new. There is one exception, but I won't ruin that for you. You can see that on your own. And one thing that I've come to judge Deadpool movies for is the intro scene. They always start off with a huge bang, kind of hyping you up for what you're in for, over the next 90 or so minutes. And well, that tradition is definitely continued here, to say the least. You get a pretty cool fight scene with Deadpool being his, infectious comedic self. It's violent, packed with jokes, and it did a good job at, setting up this film. That said, I felt like it was a little bit lacking compared to Deadpool 2, which, I liked that opening scene just a little better. The chemistry between Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman is great. I don't know if they know each other outside of work, but they play very well off of each other. And I personally think that they're both talented actors. I've always thought that. And they turn in great performances here, even during the more serious moments. This whole thing is just elaborate and action-packed. I mean, I lost track of how many fight scenes that happened here. And of course, the jokes. There is about one every 3 seconds, so this is as much of a comedy as it is action. And, I needed a good laugh, so it was perfect timing. Ryan Reynolds has always had excellent comedic timing, and it's Deadpool, so, that's basically mandatory. And again, I won't mention any names, but there are some really cool cameos here. One in particular that I was really excited about. Now I'm going to go into some negatives. First, even though I was entertained, most of the time, no superhero film needs to be over 2 hours long. Okay, well, Endgame and Civil War can do that, but I think this should have been closer to 90 minutes. And for a $200 million budget, I thought that some of the CGI looked kind of bad. Don't get me wrong, I mean, it's mostly a good-looking movie, but in Marvel tradition, there's some definite flubs, especially for something with such a goddamn huge budget. And though I mentioned this being, pretty thoroughly funny, some of the jokes I just thought were kind of lazy. Like, let's make this bit as vulgar as possible, to the point where it's almost confusing as to why that character just said it. Another problem I had was the main villain, and this is the same problem I had with the first Deadpool movie. These villains just always seem so uninteresting to me, to the point where every scene they're in just comes across as filler. And my last complaint is pretty much half of the storyline, which involves the M word, multiverse. I'm so bored of multiverse comic book movie storylines. It's just so overdone, and I'm just gonna leave it at that. That said, I did kind of like Wolverine's story arc, where it's basically the storyline from the Old Man Logan comic series, which I was a huge fan of. They kind of used that also for the Logan movie from some years back, which I thought was pretty good, but I also had some similar problems that I had with this movie. But yeah, well, if you haven't read Old Man Logan, definitely check it out. So overall, I do find this movie to be a little overrated, and it might be my least favorite of the 3 Deadpool movies so far. I mean, I'd have to revisit the first one, but I definitely liked part 2 more. So that might sound like a lot of negatives, but don't get me wrong, this movie was a lot of fun. A bit of a mess, that kind of feels like an ADHD fever dream at times, but Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman both continue to do their characters justice and do it right. I'm giving Deadpool and Wolverine a 7.5 out of 10. This is one of the biggest doses of comic book nostalgia that we will likely ever see, and it kind of works and kind of doesn't work simultaneously. I would definitely recommend it to all comic book fans, especially the 90s stuff, or to anyone that just wants to have a good time. Cheers, guys.